Russia, since the summit in Anchorage, Putin has escalated the attacks on Ukraine, including last night, where they launched what is being described in terms of drones and missiles as the biggest attack yet of the war on Kyiv, including a government building. President Trump made some comments that people still don't quite get, saying European leaders are going to be in Washington either today or tomorrow, and said yes, there'd be more sanctions in response to a reporter's question, but also said Putin was his friend or he's close to Putin and he was optimistic about ending the war. Not really sure where either of those two things came from or where they're going, but right now I think the debate is there are going to be sanctions. Apparently, there's going to be more military arming of Ukraine. The question is it to get Russia to the table or is it to win the war? Here's our diplomatic correspondent, David Ignatius.
More than 800 drones, 13 plus missiles, and more notably, they were on this. Many of them were on the center of Kyiv. The Council of Ministers was hit. That's a building that many of us, when we're in Ukraine, go visit officials, and has generally not been targeted in the war. What we're seeing is, I think, absolutely decisive, brutal statement by Vladimir Putin that he doesn't want a settlement of the war. He wants to win the war. And he's prepared to keep fighting until he gets what he wants, which is essentially a capitulation by the Ukrainian government on key security issues. He wants effective dominance of Ukraine's military. He certainly wants Ukraine out of NATO. President Trump had hoped, I think, admirably, that he might be able to settle this war. But the Alaska summit was a bust. And although he talked yesterday about being willing to impose economic sanctions against Russia, I think most people are guessing right now that's simply not going to be enough to alter the course of this war, that people are going to have to think seriously about more weapons, a more decisive posture for Ukraine's supporters, especially the European countries. But yesterday was a chilling day for anybody who hopes this terrible war can come to an end anytime soon. My feeling is it's going to continue a long while. The death and destruction are only going to get worse.
Dan, thoughts on what David said?
I mean, I think to a large extent he's right, which is it's pretty clear. So now that the summit in Alaska, while well-intentioned, did not have its intended effect. I don't think anyone believes there's going to be a three-way meeting anytime soon with the heads of state. And ultimately, the question is, how do you force Putin to take what we're saying in seriously? And I think, as we've talked about, I liked Besant's line about trying to cut, which collapses first, the Russian will or the Russian economy. But you got to go all in on that. And they are right to lean on the Europeans to stop buying oil. But at the same time, as we've talked about, you are going to have to send serious weaponry and let Putin know this isn't a one-time thing. You're not getting any further in the trench line.
Larry, where are the points of agreement or disagreement between you and David and you and Dan?
Not much, except think about what you just said, Dan. It's like, yeah, Europe shouldn't be buying Russian oil. Well, over €1 billion worth of Russian oil Europe bought last year. Why is that even on the table? Why in the hell do they continue to fund Putin's war machine? And then,
in part because the U.S. didn't object because they didn't want gas prices to rise during the election.
Well, at the time, but during the Biden administration, you're right. But that was also at a time where we weren't as energy independent and pumping as much as we are now, so that we can actually be an alternative and other countries can be alternatives.
But the challenge, Larry, is if we ship $1 billion of our oil over, if they buy it, it's $1 billion less of oil here, to Mark's point, unless OPEC opens the spigot even more, right, which they might. We could ask our ambassador, Eric Adams, if talk to Saudi Arabia.
Exactly.
It might send prices up.
I hear you. All right. You know what? Yeah. Just for the sake of argument, I'll stipulate that. How serious are we about this war? How serious are the Europeans about this war?
Yeah. All right. Just exit question, and nobody knows. So just your spidey sense. Will the president act decisively this week on sanctions and a military plan? By Friday, will he have said something decisive about it? Dan?
No.
Larry?
On sanctions, yes, and look for more pressure on India and Europe with regard to energy. That's
This week.
yes,
This week.
this week.
Okay. All right. We'll see. All right.
And I say that only because this weekend his remarks, I thought he showed more frustration and more anger toward Russia and Putin than I've seen this entire time. I think his patience is done.
Yeah, although again, as I said yesterday, there was a time when we was talking to reporters where he talked about his optimism about ending the war and about his good relationship with Putin. So he's classic, but not unbridled angry. That was a delicious video experience. I think you'll agree. Now, what you need to do in return for getting to enjoy that is hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss a thing.